where friends whose mates or friends are experiencing diminishing mental capabilities. Normal conversations and basic life become a struggle. Even now, in this moment, our minds take us to a friend or a loved one we know dealing with a relatively healthy person with diminishing mental capabilities for everyday living. Give us strong minds and good hearts to persevere, to learn more about how we can love well those in need and support caregivers who must provide for those in need. With heavy hearts and our strong and persevering minds, we ask for more awareness, wisdom, and strength to meet these challenges. And I pray in your persevering spirit. Amen.
Thank you, Lori. If I can have all guests and video Rotarians, visiting Rotarians, please stand.
Connie and Bob Crane from Iowa. Not much news this week. They got a 40-degree temperature and then snow is melting, and that's about it from Iowa.
Thank you for the Iowa update. Let's find Mr. Bill over here.
Good afternoon, fellow Rotarians. I have Yoriko, who is a 15-year volunteer at Al's Place. And Al's Place is a respite for those who have Alzheimer's disease. She's also been my wife for 45 years and my love of my life for 48.
Good afternoon, fellow Rotarians. My guest today is Sarah Rusher, who is our RYE Rotary Youth Exchange student from Austria.
And my guest today is Jackie Lee. She's from the Netherlands and she's a junior at Newberry High School. So we had a little trip out from Newberry here and or a little later, but she's enjoying at the school, but since they don't have field hockey, which she's used to, and she likes playing the piano. And I want to just suggest she loves music, and if you have a subscription to some musical program that you find that you have an extra ticket, do think of these students, any of these performances. They'd love to see a variety of things that we have to offer. Thank you.
All the way to the back.
Good afternoon, fellow Rotarians. My guest today is a former colleague at UF Small Animal Hospital, Dr. Gary Ellison. Gary is a surgeon as opposed to my internal medicine bent, and we made a great pair over the years. So welcome, Gary.
Here's Joe.
Joe's standing here by accident. Goodbye, Joe.
Good afternoon, fellow Rotarians. My guest today is Bill Langston. He is a member of the Chiefland Club, Rotary Club of Chiefland, past president, and he's also the chief investigator for the 8th Circuit Public Defender's Office.
I think that's it, John.
Fantastic. Well, thanks everybody for coming. I'm super excited that we have so many guests today because we have one special announcement. Today, we have a special on our Wild Game Feast tickets, thanks to a anonymous donor. But normally it would be 6 tickets for the price of 5, but today you get it on today only, and you have to see Wes after the meeting or during the meeting. It's ever more convenient. You get an additional $25 off. I think there's a stampede to Wes, so be careful back there, buddy. And with that, we are lucky that today we have a craft talk, and I'll let Buddy Goodman come up here and introduce our craft talk.
It's been a long time. A long time. Good afternoon, fellow Rotarians. Cole Barnett joined our club last year in October. By November, I'm proud to say, he was already actively earning his Rotary wings at Hatchet Creek, preparing for the seafood spectacular, and along with his 16-year-old son. So he's not exactly new. But Cole is a native of Williston. He practices real estate law with the Salter Fiber firm. I think you're going to enjoy his story, so I'm going to sit down and let him tell it. I'm very, very pleased to introduce and welcome Cole Barnett.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Buddy. Buddy has reserved 15 minutes for rebuttal, so I'll try to keep this short. I am from Williston, and my dad was and still is a horse trainer there. My mom was a stay-at-home mom until she unfortunately passed away in '92. I was 9 at the time, and my little brother was 4. My dad is quite a character, and we had a bachelor existence for the second half of my childhood. We would literally put all the clothes and from the dryer in these bins in the living room. Socks and underwear went in one Rubbermaid bin, shirts in another, and pants in another. And in lieu of folding clothes, we would meet in the living room every morning and dress together out of these bins. And that's how I grew up for half of my childhood. That bled into my adulthood a little bit. And after high school, I was studying philosophy at the University of Florida. Naturally, the son of a horse trainer would study philosophy. And I took a sabbatical for about a decade and practiced the art and science of farrier work, horseshoeing. I spent 10 years putting shoes and trimming the bottoms of horses' hooves in Ocala. Please take me out for lunch and coffee. It's the greatest career ever, and I'll tell you all about it. Unfortunately, I had 10 good years, and that was it. I had a knee issue that got in the way and had to retool, and so I finally grew up and matured a little bit around age 30 and went to law school. I spent 3 years there at the University of Florida, graduated finally as a Gator. I spent 2 years working for a federal judge in Ocala right after graduation, 4 years as a labor and employment attorney, and then I found where my heart is in real estate law, doing transactions with Salter Fiber. They're great folks, and I'm very lucky to be there. So thank you for your time, and I'll give the floor back to Buddy for rebuttal. Thank you.
Thank you very much for completing this. Apparently, Buddy wants to come back. I'll let him say something. That he gets his that he got. Okay, okay. I do want to present you with your 4-way plaque in recognition for you giving your craft talk, and we're certainly glad to have you as part of this club. Thank you. Okay. I forgot to print out the bio for our speaker, so you got to give me a second. Okay, it gives me great pleasure. I don't have any additional announcements, so we're just going to keep on rolling. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Donna Lee, who's our speaker today. She is the program manager for the Alzheimer's Association. She has spent more than 20 years serving communities, preparing for or responding to disasters. She has an 18-year combined relationship with the American Red Cross as a high-level operations manager and a community engagement director. During this time, she's deployed over 100 times to both traditional and non-traditional operations, serving communities all over the country. With prior experience as a firefighter and a fire chief, as well as administrative roles in insurance, accounting, human resources, and commercial operations, her skills and experience made her a unique fit for these roles. Additionally, her vast volunteer roles in community clubs, including Rotary, she is a current member of the Gilchrist Club, serving as president, and she's the incoming governor for Area 11. So she's got quite a Rotary history under her belt. She's also served in social service agencies, and it's allowed her to stay relevant and in touch with the communities that she serves. Currently, Donna lives on the beautiful Santa Fe River in Branford, Florida, and she serves the greater Jacksonville and Gainesville areas. So if you please welcome our speaker today, Donna Lee.
So, good afternoon. Can you hear me okay in the back? Very good, very good. So, first and foremost, I'm just honored to be here. I travel around to Rotary clubs. I have visited 21 Rotary clubs between Tallahassee and Jacksonville this year alone. So, I'm stealing all kind of ideas, just so you know, for my own club. We have 34 active members right now. Our big fundraiser is the fishing tournament coming up on the Swanee River in April. We normally make just under 20,000 with that fundraiser, and we support our local causes. Are of course scholarships, giving back to our youth, and you know, all the same things y'all do. Your club is far more robust, but I'm not competing with you. I intend to try to mirror you. So, this is my second year as president. So I've been in this role for 6 months, a little over 6 months. I volunteered to take a second term. No, I'm not crazy, but we are revamping our club, and I didn't think 1 year was enough time. I didn't want to destroy the club. I wanted to help it, so I thought 2 years would be advantageous to do that. I absolutely love working in the community. As you were told, I had a long-standing relationship with the Red Cross and high-level disaster operations, and I want to tell you how I had no idea 20 years ago that when I got into emergency response and just all of that world, how that would tie into what I'm doing now. But here's the connection, and I want to get your attention when I say this. So imagine during Hurricane Irma. How many folks were here during Hurricane Irma? Okay. So I ran the feeding operation for Hurricane Irma out of the Gainesville Red Cross office, and then we moved it down to Ocala where the need was. I've responded to 36 hurricanes over the past 16 years as some level, high-level operations manager, which typically means sheltering and feeding people. Now imagine this. Let me just set the picture for you. Every single time that I go back in my memory, there was a sheltering operation. And as one of the high-level operations managers, I got to deal with all the non-traditional things that popped up at the shelter. The one consistent thread through all of it was a family had made a choice to say, I'm going to go pick up my loved one, a senior person in their family, had Alzheimer's or dementia, could have been diagnosed, could have not been diagnosed, whatever the case was, picked them up from their home, took them from their whatever arranged living situation was, picked them up from maybe an assisted living facility, a memory care facility, whatever. Put these people in a vehicle and tried to evacuate with them. Now, if you know anything about Alzheimer's or dementia, it is disruptive to daily life, and just simple daily life and routines are super, super important for that person. Then you take them and you put them in an already stressful situation. Maybe the family was trying to leave. Maybe they got to the edge of town and thought, oh gosh, what have I done? Any number of scenarios. They would bring their loved one out of desperation, lack of awareness, just trying to get some help. They would bring their person to the shelter. I'm going to say something that sounds crass, but it is the honest truth. They would drop grandma off at the shelter. Let me say that one more time because I want you to hear me. Families would drop their loved one off with Alzheimer's or dementia at the shelter because there was a perception that the shelter could handle it better than the family could. It's not that they didn't love them. It's not that they didn't care. It's not that they didn't want to help them. They quickly realized that they were not capable, completely unaware themselves as caregivers, and just was not equipped. Now, here's where it gets sticky. As a shelter operations manager, what do I do with these people? If I had known 15 years ago about the Alzheimer's Association and what they do, I would not live with the incredible amount of guilt that I have every single day because I could have done better. I live with that every single day. And I've run sheltering operations all over this country for almost 20 years. And not one time did the Alzheimer's Association come up, not once. So now I get to spend the rest of my life, I hope, being able to educate communities about what this organization can do, how it supports caregivers, how it supports families on this journey, And if anybody's ever been even remotely close to this journey, much less on it, it is a hard road, a very, very hard road. So I want to set the tone by saying this is what drives me and how my life has turned out to be twofold: disaster and emergency response. And I've done some incredible things over 20 years and helped thousands of families. But now I get to take that one step further and be able to specialize in an area that we don't talk about enough and we don't have enough socialization about. And we're going to talk about that in just a second. Let's talk some numbers locally. Did you know, and I just looked up these numbers a while ago, I wanted to make sure that I had accurate numbers. Did you know that here in Alachua County, there are more than 4,800 documented cases of Alzheimer's or dementia? Now, Alachua County is serving an extra 2,200 people because they're coming out of Levy, Dixie, Gilchrist, Lafayette County, and these small counties. So if you combine those numbers together, you're right at 7,000 people that come into Gainesville or seek services here in Gainesville just for Alzheimer's or dementia. Anybody surprised at that number? Okay, I saw some hands up. I was surprised at that number. Let me tell you, I was. So I've got a presentation. Where is it going to be shown? Okay. I forgot my remote. Hold on, y'all. Oh, gotcha. Forgot about them. Thank you. Oh gosh, we got two hands going. I mean, I got skills, but I don't know about all this. Whew. Okay. So, and again, where am I seeing it? Okay, thank you. Yay. All right, so the Alzheimer's Association produces what's called the annual facts and figures. I don't have it quite yet. It should be out in another week or so for 2023 for last year's numbers. But it actually describes how caregiving impacts, and it's got tangible numbers to go with it. I don't know if you can see that in the back, but 806, and it's actually more than that now, 806 Floridians provide unpaid care. So we're talking spouses, adult children, adult sibling groups, that kind of thing, that provide unpaid care for just Floridians. And again, this number is actually from the tail end of last year, but we use it for the whole year. So that number has increased dramatically since then. Did you know that Florida has 10% of all the dementia and Alzheimer's diagnosis in the country? 10%. Yeah. Is that number staggering? Is that surprising? Yeah. Now listen, don't be talking about those old people. Can we talk about old people? We are not old, we are seasoned. Some folks are seasoned with just salt and pepper. Some have, something a little bit stronger, but we're just seasoned. Okay. Because I don't intend to get old. Mm-mm. And some folks are aging like a fine wine, and some of us are aging like milk. So, I hear you. I like this crowd. When are y'all coming to visit my club? We meet on Mondays at noon. Y'all want to come to Gilchrist, come to Trenton? Just once. Just once. Anytime. Good. Do what now? Oh, where? I thought we meet at the Women's Club right behind the Sheriff's Department and our brand new jail. So, all right. We'll talk about that separately in a minute. All right. So, again, more than 806 Floridians are providing unpaid care. I want to touch on one of the arms of the Alzheimer's Association. We have an advocacy arm. Anybody know that? Like advocacy, like in Tallahassee, advocacy, that kind of advocacy. One of the things that they're working on is, and I'm going to put this in very, very simple terms. There's a whole bunch of other ways that they put it, but very, very simply, how do we get big box insurance companies to put money back into the household? Because the caregivers have often lost income, expenses have gone up to provide care for this person. So how do we get the insurance companies to put money back into that household to offset some of this? Not to mention, as we all know, everything is just plain more expensive. So that's one of the things that they're working on. They're also working on not a mandated training, but a statewide training for all law enforcement, public safety partners, dispatchers, firefighters, law enforcement officers, and emergency management workers as well. And I'm going to tell you about that in just a minute. So some more numbers. I want you to pay attention to that 24.1%. That's the number of increase we're expecting by 2025. Yeah, big number. And that's just simply based on the trends, what we're seeing. Now, why is that number going up? We were just talking over here. I'm from the generation, and y'all, I'm a South Georgia girl, Vidalia, Georgia, where they grow the onions, okay? Way out in the woods. It's kind of like where I live now on the Santa Fe River. I live so far out in the woods, we have to ship in sunshine by FedEx. So it's a very, very rural community. But I was taught your parents and your grandparents, they're going to get old. Your job is to, no matter how crazy they get, no matter how whatever happens, your job is to take care of them, and you might as well get ready because that's your job. And you're not allowed to put them in a home. You have to keep them at home in your home, no matter what it costs you. That's how I grew up. That's the generational advice and mandate that I was given. How about y'all? Exactly. So we have entire generations of people that don't talk about this subject. We're talking about it now. We're talking about it. People are finally getting help. They're asking questions. They're getting early diagnosis. They're getting screenings. That's part of the reason that we're seeing so many more numbers right now. But still, it's because we should be talking about it even more. So, the impact of Alzheimer's in the workplace. One of my actions is to educate employers. For instance, I am working on a project, and I'm currently in conversation with the city of Gainesville itself. I do a little bit of part-time work for the Public Works Department in addition to my Alzheimer's work. But we're talking about how do we get employees to be better prepared, enhance their toolbox when they become a caregiver. So you've got a 40, 50-year-old person, they've got the parents or maybe even grandparents still at home. How do we better position them to become that caregiver? If we can enhance their toolbox now before that time happens, we can help reduce the number of days away from work. We can help get them in the conversation before it gets to the point of having to take off for FMLA. And if you own a business or you run a department of any kind and you have staff has to go out on leave, it is impactful, hugely impactful. It cuts your productivity. It impacts the other team members. It has a negative snowball effect, and we all know that. I'm trying to get ahead of that. So I'm also teaching, by the way, our Green for Life partner, the people that pick up our solid waste here in the city. I'm in conversation. We're setting a date for me to go train all of those drivers, because guess who they interact with in the field? Retired people that are not out to work somewhere, and they see over and over, because that's part of my little part-time thing that I do is help with customer service there and just analyze data coming in. We have a significant number of people that are of a certain age, some of those seasoned people we talked about, that are at home. Maybe you have a gentleman that puts out his garbage can every single day because he thinks that's what he's supposed to do. Well, you know you can catch a fine if you leave your garbage can out on the wrong day, right? Y'all know that? If you don't, you should. That's a separate program. Anyway, so I want to teach those drivers to say, how do you recognize Alzheimer's and dementia in someone? What are those big bells and whistles? What are those big warning signs? How do you recognize that? And then what do you do with it? So when they leave my training, they will have that piece of paper in front of you. They will have one of those to give to the caregiver that says, hey, here's a helpline number for you. And let me better handle my communication to make sure that I'm treating this person respectfully, with dignity, and I am appropriately communicating with them for both of us to have a successful interaction. So that's just some of the stuff that's going on behind the scenes. Let's talk about the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's. Dementia, big old umbrella. Think about it this way. Cancer, big umbrella term. And you've got umpteen dozen types of cancer underneath that umbrella. Dementia is the big umbrella term. Alzheimer's is a form of dementia. So they're not necessarily interchangeable, but that is the differentiation between them. You have Alzheimer's, you have Lewy body, which is the type that Bruce Willis has. You have vascular dementia that may have had a stroke. Anybody that is diving in my beautiful Santa Fe River and they come back up because they've got what's called the bends from not having air to them, they can develop dementia. And did you know that? And y'all brace yourself. I'm fixing to hit somebody right in the stomach. You ready? Hold on. Did you know that extended hearing loss and untreated hearing loss leads the way for dementia to creep in? I saw that. So if you're not hearing the best anymore in this seasoned part of your life, get ahead of it. Imagine you're sitting around having conversations, and because you can't hear anything or can't hear everything, you stop saying, hey, what did they say? Or you don't want to keep asking people to repeat it, so you check out in that conversation. Imagine doing that over time. That's how dementia creeps in. Do I have anybody's attention on that? I hear you. Go get it checked. Go. Just do it. Let's talk about the 10 warning signs. Have you ever walked into a room and couldn't remember why you were there? Have you ever forgot where you put your car keys, purse, wallet, cell phone, whatever? That does not mean you have dementia. Okay? Everybody breathe. Just breathe. It's okay. Here are some of the warning signs. And we have a whole class about this, by the way. I'd love to come teach it to your church, your homeowners association, your employee group, whatever. I'd love to come teach this. But here's the 10 warning signs. But here's the basics of it, okay? When your cognitive and memory deficiencies disrupt your daily life. That's the term, when it disrupts your daily life. For instance, I walk into the house, I've got car keys, a bag of groceries, my computer bag, I'm probably talking on the phone at the same time, and then I can't remember where I put my phone up. I have the ability to say, okay, what was I doing when I walked through the door? I had my phone going, I had groceries, all that kind of stuff. My first thing when I walk in to the door and put up groceries, because I've had to drive an hour with them, is get the cold stuff put up. Well, guess where my phone is? Like, I laid it in the freezer, you know. The indicator if you have Alzheimer's or dementia, or you're starting to experience that, if you can't do that problem solving, that's the kind of indication that you're looking for. If you no longer possess that ability, or you're having trouble retracing your steps, problem solving around that kind of thing. You've driven to the same church for 15 years, and all of a sudden you find yourself at a red light, and it's like, wait a minute, which way is the church again? Now, I know things change in cities and all that, but if you just drove it last week, you probably should remember which way to go. But if you can't process that, that would be an indicator, one of the 10 warning signs. We get calls all the time from people to say, why is my spouse, and I'll just use one example, why is my spouse, who has been a preacher for 45 years, has never said a cuss word or made an inappropriate comment in his entire life, and all of a sudden he's cussing like a sailor, and he's telling inappropriate jokes and making really interesting comments to the wait staff at the restaurant? What is happening to my person? Y'all, the healthy human brain weighs about 3 pounds. About most people that die with Alzheimer's, their brain normally weighs around half a pound. Let me say that again. Your brain right now, 3 pounds. Alzheimer's and dementia deteriorates the physical brain, which is why things don't work any longer. Down to half a pound. That's what the average is. I saw a whole bunch of light bulbs go off just then. Whole bunch. Oh, they forgot me. Okay. Whew. So this talks about, well, let me just tell you. In the data that we track, families, about 60% of families say that they would not seek medical attention, screenings, advice. They wouldn't talk to their primary care physicians about their loved ones because they don't want to deal with it. They're seeing all those signs. They have questions. They're picking up on things going wrong and not working properly, but they won't go ask. That's part of my job is to help socialize this subject and talk about it, help to demystify going to get help, going to get screenings, trying to figure out how do we better position families to become caregivers. Because as you know, one person in the family does not get this diagnosis. The entire family gets it. And the importance, of course, of early diagnosis with anything else is just get ahead of it. And there's so many resources out there. Maybe it's early stage, first step support groups. Okay, I have this diagnosis. What the heck do I do now? What do I do next with this? As a family, as a caregiver, as a support person, what are the next steps? How do I keep this loved one healthy, engaged as long as I possibly can and don't lose my sanity in the process? How do we do that? Get ahead of it early. Now, how does the Alzheimer's Association help? The page on the table, and if anybody didn't get one on the table, I have stacks of them up here. It's called our helpline, Alzheimer's Helpline, 1-800-272-3900. This page also has an entire list of sub-sites that talk about how to get additional help, maybe like an online 24/7 support group. 3 in the morning, a caregiver that's been up battling the day, whatever the day looks like, and they get on their phone and they can start interacting and logging in with people all over the country that's going through the same thing, on the same journey. You would be amazed at how many solutions come through the support groups. It is absolutely amazing what families are doing to support each other. In this helpline, you don't reach an automated system. You don't go through a dozen menus. You reach a live person, a master level clinician. And these folks are trained to de-escalate a situation over the phone. If the caregiver, and y'all, I'm so not kidding when I say this, if a caregiver is literally ready to put a pillow over their loved one's face and smother them, and if you've ever walked this journey, you know exactly what I'm talking about. When you're just at your very end, these are the people that talk the caregivers down. They are master level clinicians trained in this kind of trauma and critical response, de-escalation tactics over the phone. They can also connect you to a memory care, a memory screening clinic. They can connect you to doctors in your area. They can become your advocates between primary care physicians, pharmacies, things like that. They can move mountains. I've seen them do it. I see them do it every single day. It is amazing what they can do. They can also answer any questions you have. If you're not quite ready to pull the trigger to talk to your own doctor and you just want to get some more advice, and please don't go to WebMD or don't Google stuff. You'll just be inundated. Go to the Alzheimer's website and start looking at information that way, or call these folks. Call and talk to a real human about what questions and concerns you have. No question is too little or not important enough to answer for you. They do it all. Here's a list of the programs that we offer as well. These are free classes. I will come teach them for you. I can do it in person. I can do it virtually. I travel between Tallahassee and Jacksonville every single day. So let me know when I can come and meet with your group. I realize you can't see this, but some of our classes are healthy living for the brain and body, the 10 warning signs, dementia behaviors, where we help teach families why this is happening and what you can do differently. For instance, we teach a class about how a family can have the conversation about when it's time for your loved one to stop driving. Let me tell you a quick story about that. There was a call that came into the helpline. Lovely family. They met grandma for her 75th birthday. They were having a big dinner, huge family. And they decided just before they served dinner that they were going to tell grandma that she could no longer drive anymore. And they physically took her keys. And I'm thinking, well, that's where you went wrong to start with. That's your first mistake. So grandma was gracious and very, very polite and did not say a word and just said, okay. And of course, they were all surprised because they thought, well, she's going to be fighting us in a minute. She didn't fight them just then, but while they were all fixing their plates in her kitchen, she slipped out the side door and obtained a baseball bat. They didn't know where she was for a minute until they heard the sound of breaking glass. When they got outside, she had busted all the windows of a 2-year-old Cadillac Escalade and was working real hard on the windshield. And when they asked her, they said, why are you doing this? She said, if I can't drive it, you ain't either. We can help you have a different conversation with a different outcome. We can help you with that. Please don't do it that way. Please don't do it that way. Don't do that. So I could talk for years here. So this is the high level overview. Show of hands. Have you learned anything today? That's what I needed right there. That's what I needed. So we've got some time for questions. So who's got questions? Yes, sir.
Excuse me, you have this relationship posted up there about Alzheimer's and death. Dead.
Yes.
How does that happen? I don't quite understand that. The body is functioning, systems are working, but what is it?
So I'm going to introduce somebody, Dr. Jeremy Grant over here. Dr. Jeremy Grant is, I'm going to let you introduce yourself. Please do. Yeah. Now, while he's coming up, I'm going to give you my answer. He's the clinical professional, I'm not. Here's my answer to that. Because the brain is shrinking and certain things are not there anymore, and those average day of 70,000 messages that are going through the brain, they have nowhere to land or they have nowhere to start. So the brain physically goes away. So that's why in the end, most Alzheimer's patients, they die because their body forgets how to swallow.
Yes, thank you. It's precisely that, that what we often fail to realize that our brains control just about everything that we do. Swallowing, breathing, and more complex things like fighting off infections. And so usually the cause of death in Alzheimer's is some other, not the deterioration of the brain itself, but what the deterioration of the brain leads to. More vulnerable to infections, things like pneumonia, or trouble swallowing or trouble breathing is what ends up happening. And I didn't get a chance to introduce myself. My name is Dr. Jeremy Grant. I'm a postdoctoral fellow at the University of Florida, and I work with the One Florida Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. And we do research on Alzheimer's disease and catching it early. Happy to answer any additional questions.
Hey, Dr. Grant. I have a question about hereditary influences. Can you explain a little more about how when one has it, maybe more may have it in the family?
Yeah, there is a specific gene that you may hear about that is associated with a heightened risk for Alzheimer's. It's the ApoE gene. And if you have 2 copies of that, you have a very high chance of developing Alzheimer's yourself, particularly at an earlier age than most people. Usually we're looking at Alzheimer's disease as a risk factor after age 65, but some people who have that specific gene, they can have it much earlier, 50s, 40s. Even saw one patient who was about 38 who was developing symptoms. But that is a very rare case. When someone has Alzheimer's disease purely due to genetic causes, is maybe about 1 to 2% of all Alzheimer's disease cases. Most of the time, it's more related to a variety of other risk factors, and is generally otherwise unexplained. And that's why we're trying to study it and study it to capture it early. And there's lots of lifestyle things that are mentioned in that presentation that people can do to reduce the risk of Alzheimer's. So even if you have a genetic risk, it's not necessarily your destiny. There's lots of things you can do to mediate that risk.
Great presentation. So my question is, I saw you said you expect 25% increase in Florida, and I wonder how much bias it may have if there are other people coming from other states retiring here. That's my one question. Another question is about advocacy. I teach in prison sometime, and what I'm seeing, at least in this type of prison, there is elderly population that may have this Alzheimer's, but how do you provide? It's not a caregiver, but it's the issue of access. How do you provide services to those people, and does it connect to access to disabilities?
Great questions. So yes, Florida absolutely has an unfair disadvantage because our state attracts people from all over the country, and we just have a plain out older population here in Florida, especially in South and Central Florida. The people in general are just plain older and of that appropriate age. So yes, absolutely, we're going to see larger numbers here no matter what we do because of that. I am thrilled to know that you are doing some advocacy and work in the prison system. I am currently in conversation with Lancaster Prison over in Gilchrist, Chiefland area about training the correctional staff. I can't do a lot to help the individuals with Alzheimer's or dementia. What I can do is equip those correctional officers and everybody that they interact with better ways to engage. Equip them with a better toolbox for how to work with, help to rehabilitate, or just simply help this person through their day-to-day life. How to keep them in a better, more peaceful place, which is exactly what you want in a correctional facility, and how to de-escalate when you're dealing with somebody that does have Alzheimer's or dementia. When can I come to your prison? When can I do that? Let's talk. Let's talk. Don't leave. Stay with me today, okay? Yes.
Hi, thanks again for your presentation, Mike Conroy. We moved to Florida to assist our in-laws, my father-in-law who was deteriorating with Alzheimer's, and he came to live with us, and it was hard. It was very hard. He would get up in the middle of the night, put on 3 pairs of pants, and start walking to the hospital where his wife was. So, we had to constantly be vigilant. So thank you for the work that you do, which is probably thankless a lot of the time. There was an article on 60 Minutes a couple of weeks ago. Dr. Ali Brazai, who had done work initially on Parkinson's and discovered nodes on the hippocampus that under ultrasound could treat Alzheimer's and addiction and alcoholism. What can you tell us about the science that is developing along those lines, if any?
Take a shot at it. Focus ultrasound, a really novel technology that's being used for people with Parkinson's disease and other movement disorders. That is specifically aimed at targeting. It's using ultrasound to get at parts of the brain that are kind of deep in the brain. So kind of the parts of the brain that control movement are kind of deep in the brain, and you have a lot of tissue in between. So they're using ultrasound to try to get at those, because otherwise, sticking it with a needle or something else would kind of hurt other parts of the brain. In Alzheimer's disease, it's a little bit more challenging because it's a part of the brain that's, many parts of the brain, but particularly a part of the brain on the sides that's kind of on the inner surface. It's an exciting time for Alzheimer's disease research because there's been at least 2 new drugs developed that specifically target the protein that kind of goes awry and builds up and forms these plaques and tangles that leads to the loss of brain cells in Alzheimer's disease. And there hadn't been any new developed drugs that were approved for about something like 16 years or so. So looking forward to hearing more promising results about those drugs. In my work, we tell people, to throw everything you can at Alzheimer's disease. And if I could give you a medication that would, greatly reduce your chances of having a severe cognitive decline, I'm sure many of you would take it. And outside of, we probably have more evidence above and beyond these different medications and these different interventions for regular lifestyle things. The chief of them being physical activity. We know that physical activity can make a huge difference and take someone from this to a much slower rate of decline more effectively than any medications we currently know.
Doctor, we have a Zoom question. Jenny Van Hart would like to ask, if I can pull it up here again. How do you talk to your, and it might be for your partner there, how do you talk to your seasoned relative if they are already down the path of dementia, but they are in denial and are not accepting of anyone's suggestion they are in dementia?
So I would say that the best thing that you can do is get plugged into a support group. The support groups just have an immeasurable amount of tips, tricks, tried and true stuff, maybe what hasn't worked for somebody else, because every family is different. There's so many different family dynamics. There's so many different levels and just things that each person could be experiencing differently. But the support groups would be the first avenue that I would suggest. I am hoping that you guys will distribute my email address, and I can work independently with individual people regarding questions and things like that, or just call that helpline and they can help get you connected to whatever virtual or actually in-person support group that would be appropriate. But that's where I would start to help figuring out ways for your particular situation, how to start breaking down those barriers and maybe having some breakthroughs.
As we move to the next question back here, I had a question. With the discovery several years ago of CTE in athletes, especially football players, have you found a link with Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia?
Yeah, it's a very complicated relationship. There's basically a debate that kind of rages on and on. Either on one side, if you have repeated head injuries, does that just increase your risk of Alzheimer's? Or on the other side, do repeated head injuries cause a different disorder that they're calling CTE? And there's kind of evidence for both of those. And essentially, these repeated head injuries commonly seen in athletes lead to just a much more rapid form of changes, of brain changes that we see in Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's disease happening over the course of, the biological changes, possibly over the course of 10, 20 years, and CTE, that course being a lot quicker. So there's definitely a relationship that is still being clarified.
I don't want this session to end without us all realizing that Rotary does a remarkable job through the CART Fund. And it was started in South Carolina by some Rotary clubs there. And I was active in that organization or that part of Rotary for some time because my husband had Alzheimer's for 10 years. And they raise money to fund small grants to researchers who are doing various different kinds of research to find cures or diagnose. And where we started out very small, you might have remembered we had little coin boxes, or they were blue plastic cans where members would just put their change in as they came in. And that money has expanded and expanded, and now we've had some grants of millions of dollars. And every year in May, they grant funding for these different research projects that a panel of experts go through and pick out those best able to work. And they also provide a seed money for bigger grants through NIH and such. So these small researchers have hard times being funded, and we really do a remarkable job. And I encourage everybody to do what they can to contribute to that.
And
Thank you so much for that information.
Just to help out with that, that's www.cartfund, C-A-R-T, cartfund.org. And 1999, 64 grants. Thank you, Jenny, for the detail. Totaling more than 11 million have been awarded to 62 recognized research institutions.
One last question here.
It's not really a question, it's more of a statement. My dad bought long-term care insurance when he was 53. He currently receives over $7,000 a month in benefit. It's very expensive, the traditional long-term care products, but they now have riders that go on life insurance policies. So you get use out of it no matter what. They also have annuities that have riders for long-term care. Just FYI.
So before we end today, I want to point out Dr. Jeremy Grant is wearing our Walk to End Alzheimer's shirt. Let me get my best Vanna White going over here. The Walk to End Alzheimer's is our major fundraiser. We have one right here in Gainesville. I'll be sending out some information. Rotary is at the national level, is also one of the largest combined teams across the country, which means that Rotary clubs normally form a team and participate in our walk. And it's not just about raising funds. Yes, there is a fundraising element to that, but it's equally about getting awareness out. How do we keep the conversation going? And y'all, there's so many layers of this. I want to put somebody on the spot. I understand we have somebody here from Al's Place that's here. So think about this, the beautiful organization that is Al's Place here. They are where the rubber meets the road. They are providing respite care for those living with Alzheimer's and dementia, so the caregivers can have a break to do whatever they need to do, because most caregivers have their own medical issues. Then you have people like the Alzheimer's Association that's doing advocacy at the legislative level, tons of research, tons of clinical trials, things like that, providing awareness, education at the grassroots level in communities, and connecting and convening resources. Then you have something like the CART Fund that's helping to fund all of this work that's going on. So there's all these levels of things that we're working collaboratively together to help make a difference. So whichever way you want to get involved, and the Alzheimer's Association is looking for volunteers. Dr. Grant is one of our association volunteers. He actually participates in the walk and is also going to be delivering programs like this as well here in town. So get involved. We'd love to have your Rotary Club as a walk team. We'd love to have it somebody, if you want to be talking about this in other Rotary clubs or whatever, I can train you to do that. However you want to get involved, but we have a place for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Donna, in recognition for you being here today, I want to give you this certificate. We will be making a donation to the Bread of the Mighty in your honor, recognition of you speaking today. You're welcome. Just to let you guys know, our program next week, it's our ROTC program. So I hope you guys will be here. I know Margaret Combs and her group have been working to put together a fabulous presentation next week, and we'll be recognizing outstanding ROTC students at the University of Florida. Our quote of the day: one of the most important things you can do on this earth is to let people know they are not alone. And that's Shannon L. Elder. She's a life coach. And the final piece of business is our Rotary Reading Safari winning lottery number. This is a lot harder to do when you're not at a podium. It's 433. 433 is today's number. With that, the meeting is adjourned.